So as we get ready to implement swipe-based navigation, one of the things we have to remember is that our data model has to support the way we're going to move through our data. Now, if you remember from the work we did in the first course in this series, when we laid out our course manager, right, that's the guy that lets us move through all of our data, it was really based primarily on sequential access, right? The idea is if I scroll down here, you can jump to the beginning with a move first, and you can do a move prev to go backwards or move next to go forward, and you access the current item by the current property, right? So we're really based on sequential access. We want to make sure that sequential access will work for the implementation we're going to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my browser, and what I'm looking at is the Android documentation for the class fragment state pager adapter. Remember, that's the guy who's going to do the work to implement our swipe-based navigation on our UI. Now, when we implement our application, what we're going to do is inherit from this and provide the features that we need. So now if we scroll down here, we take a look, I'm just going to get past the sample code, get down here into a summary of the methods. You'll notice that one of the methods here we're responsible for, getItem, is abstract. Right? So that means obviously we have to override it. It's abstract. And getItem takes an absolute position. So what that means is that it's going to periodically ask for, I want the fragment that goes at position 0, the one at position 2, at position 3, at position 1. So it's going to do absolute positioning. So currently our data model doesn't support that. So we've got to make sure that we enhance our course manager so that it allows absolute positioning, not just sequential movement. Now another thing we'll notice is that our fragment state pager adapter itself inherits from pager adapter. And you notice here if I expand that, there's another abstract method, getCount. So getCount is basically we have to tell it how many fragments we're going to have. So that's what we need to do to our course manager, right? Is that we need to provide the ability to do those two things. Query it for how many entries there are, how many courses there are, and query for information on a particular course by its position. Okay, so we're back here in the course manager code, and we remember that we keep everything inside of an array at this point, right? So that's this courses array. So what we'll need to do is provide a property on our course manager that exposes, right, the length of that courses array. So what we'll do is we'll go down here, just scroll down a little bit. And what I'll do is that just above my move first, I'm just going to add a property, and we're just going to call it length. Right? So make a public int, call it length. Right? And then all we have to do inside of here is just implement the get, because it's read-only, and return courses dot length, and return that back. So that takes care of having the ability to interrogate our course manager for how many items there are. Now, when it comes to the absolute positioning, one thing we could do, right, is implement an indexer. So we had kind of array style access. But that would really, in our case, really kind of redefine the way we work with our course manager. Because remember that our course manager is implemented as moving to a certain position and then using the current property to get the course at that position. So an indexer probably is not the way to do it in this case. What we probably want to do is just provide some kind of absolute move method. So that's what we'll do here, is that we'll create a public method, void, and we'll call it move to, and it takes an integer position. And so we've got that there. Now ultimately, what we really want to do here is remember that all of our navigation is based on this current index, right? The current property returns back the one at current index. So what we really want to do here is just say current index equals position. So that way we scroll to that location and we access it through the current property. And fundamentally, that's good enough, but let's just go ahead and put a little bit of housekeeping here to make sure that we don't crash because of a bad position. All right, so let's put an if statement on here and just say that, well, as long as the position is greater than or equal to 0, and our position is less than or equal to, remember we have this last index where we've stored the last valid index for our array. Right? As long as it's within that range, life is good to go. Right? Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and throw an exception. Right? And we'll just throw an index out of range exception. And what we'll do in here is that we'll actually put in a good message. So basically we're just using a string.format to say that the position that's been passed in is an invalid position, must be between 0 and whatever the maximum value is. And all we'll do in here then is just put our substitution values in of position and last index. And now that takes care of everything we need there. That As long as it's valid, we set our current index to that position. If it's invalid, we throw an appropriate exception. Right, so that way we now have direct access in our course manager, but still using it in a way that's consistent with the way it was originally designed.